I remember looking at this ball and thinking, wow, that ball is going really far. And since I've been back to Bangladesh a number of times, when I look at that courtyard and I see how far that ball went, it was nowhere near. Discipline, a lot of focus, a lot of resilience, sacrifice in terms of not getting drawn out by what's going on in your social peer groups. You don't lose belief and you don't downplay yourself. Working every day, you developing yourself, you learning new things that keeps that confidence and keeps that faith moving forward. With every knockback, you take something from it. Okay, it didn't work today and let's go again tomorrow. The experience is your biggest currency. Just be real, be who you are. Coming through the system, David Bentley was magic of a player. While Dennis Bergkamp was playing in the first team, playing with David Bentley was like playing with Dennis Bergkamp. He just went into a ultra focused zone where he was able to switch off time. That time didn't exist. My delivery never needed to be on point because he was finishing them off.
Cool. All right. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Coach Lami podcast. Myself, Gerald Lami. Today I'm joined by a philosopher of life. Yeah. A man of incredible experience when it comes to the football industry. A man on a mission, a good friend of mine, Taff Rahman. Welcome, Taff. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
No, thank you for having me. And that is a grand entrance, and hopefully I can live up to a tiny bit of that. But no, appreciate you having me on. Appreciate being able to share with everyone.
Nah, anytime, man. We were supposed to do this a little while back, but do you know what it was? You you pushed me as well to make sure the platform gets to a certain level. So that inspired me to eventually, I'm still nowhere near to, where it should be or where it can be. But again, just little things like this, getting a microphone, you was like, make sure you get a microphone, make sure you get this. So it's like, we got to the point where, we're growing slowly. So I appreciate just the feedback and everything that you've given. And the reason why I said a philosopher in life, because you've come out here to visit me before as well. And just to see the way you operate and the way you go about life in general, you're a deep thinker. You're not doing things for just the sake of doing things. There's a purpose behind it and things like that. So before we get into obviously your upbringing and things like that, because again, that's a strong part of the show when we dive into your upbringing. But first and foremost, where did that mindset come from in terms of looking into things a little bit more deeper than your normal average being?
I suppose life experience is one thing that really sets us up. And in terms of my development and my growth, I've always been a person that's been very curious in terms of looking at things, but it comes from my childhood of exploration, of all those hours playing out. Not playing football, but necessarily climbing trees or hanging out with friends, playing, knocking on people's doors and hiding and not being caught, or literally just all of those kind of things. And I suppose growing up, like as a young person, hanging around older kids, younger kids, cousins, siblings, friends, you start to hear different conversations, you start to pick up different things. So that kind of always made me curious, like, oh, why is so-and-so doing that like this? And what do they know that I don't know? And how do they get better at what they're doing? And how do I do that? So in that way, it's definitely made me think differently. But also because I was born in Bangladesh as a young person and moved over to the UK, that also created a huge different lens in my development, having a life in Bangladesh where your environment because you're born there, you grew up there, it's like you are the king of your courtyard. And then you come over to the UK and you're in London, you're in this urban city and you're hanging around the States and you can't speak English, or you can't quite connect because you don't know what the go-to is. And that made me, I suppose, a little bit more thoughtful in my approach on a lot of things. So definitely the diversity of upbringing and diversity of the unfortunate, but also the fortunate situations made me think about things differently.
That's beautiful, man. And the crazy thing about it, like we've come from two different sort of backgrounds, but it's so similar as well. Like, my story as well, coming from Albania to England, not being able to speak a word of English and all of that stuff. So it's beautiful to kind of see how there's so much similarities to, no matter where you come from, there's a lot of similarities. But I want to touch on your upbringing, because again, I feel like that's a huge part in, you know, your growth in terms of as a person into your adulthood and things like that. What was the Rahman household like in terms of your parents and yourself? What sort of person was you when you was growing up as well?
I suppose there's two types of persons there, or two types of growing up. When
Mm-hmm.
I look back at my youthful days in Bangladesh and looking at the lifestyle that we had and the household that I was brought up in, um, my father used to do work, and he would have to go to work to town, which takes you about an hour and a half to get
Mm-hmm.
there because the roads are not good, and or you have to walk 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers, or you have to get a rickshaw, or however it is, you have to get a boat to cross the river to get to the other side. So very rarely did I actually see much of my father in terms of on a daily basis through the day. But one thing I always realized was that, damn, he works hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's on the grind. He's up. He's doing this. Um, and he was always providing for not just our family but the extended family, so
Yeah.
looking after my uncles, my grandma, the house next door, and the house. So it was pretty much, you know, the saying when they go, it takes a village to raise a kid. It was
Mm-hmm.
more so like one man is feeding the village. It was that kind. So looking at the way he used to do things was a huge inspiration. And at the same time, from my mum's perspective, like she taught me discipline in terms of like reading, studying,
Mm-hmm.
like being polite to people, being thoughtful in the approach. And I suppose a lot of love came from my mum, because my dad was working heavily.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at the same time, I remember my school days, which was phenomenal. Like um, sometimes when I go back to Bangladesh, I see the school, and I'm like, was that it? Like,
Wow.
and it's looking back at it, it seemed like it would take a day's walk just to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But during those walks to school, you're going there with kids of all different ages. You have to get across a river from a bamboo bridge. Times you'll fall in there, so you start working out. You know what?
Yeah.
I can't slip now. I got to maneuver like this, and I got to maneuver like that. Or don't go in front of that kid because that kid is quite bubbly and might try
Mm-hmm.
to give you a little nudge and so forth. So you start realizing these little kind of things that go on as young people. So I suppose in Bangladesh it was a very organic way of upbringing. Little electricity,
Mm.
no computers, television, one for the whole like 30, 40 people in that kind of vicinity. And then I moved over to London where things changed, and I suppose roles reversed a little bit. And then I saw
Mm.
my dad struggle as a man who was successful in terms of being able to have his own shop or have his own business. But the work ethic was always there. And within a short frame of time, he was able to actually set up his own business and create ways of making an income. But I do remember the early stages of him not being able to transfer what he was able to do in Bangladesh to over here. So again, like looking at that, I was really intrigued, like how he was doing things. Um, and then on my mum's side, it was similar. She was still
Mm-hmm.
providing like the motherly care, and being very supportive and so forth. So that transition was different, in many different ways, but made me look at things in so many different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So going to school in London, where I was king of the courtyard
Yeah.
back home, and here I am, the silent kid at the back, not wanting to actually say anything
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And I still remember to this one point where it was stay with me when I when the teacher was asking something, and I was just copying the person next to me, and I just wrote their name down,
Yeah.
and the whole class just laughed. And then I knew I definitely have to step up my game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember my dad teaching me like a little bit of English that he was trying to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So making those adjustments was really different. And along that journey, I've got a big family. So I've got 4 brothers, one older, 3 below me, and a sister and another sister in Bangladesh. So it was um, it was a big household. And
Hmm.
my older brother was a very good footballer.
Okay.
And he was the one probably everyone used to come up to and go, "Oh yeah, your brother's a good player, isn't he?" And I don't think I ever planned for it, but it was like, oh, I want to be good as my brother,
Hmm.
or I want to challenge my brother. And there was an element of like, okay, every time I play, I'll work hard and so forth. So there was a natural alpha male competition in the
Hmm.
household, alongside the makeup of my father's character traits and his behavior and the way he'd done things, and also my mother's motherly instincts
Hmm.
and love and empathy and so forth. So it was a real bubbly household in many different ways.
Bro, that's amazing, man. It's so beautiful to hear as well because me knowing you now and you kind of breaking down how your household was, I could see those traits. Like I could see what you're saying about, your dad is a provider, like you doing the work that you do in terms of like mentoring and just things that you do for the Bangladesh community as well. And just for people in general, you always try to provide, you always try to give something, whether it be information or just some sort of material that will help people. You are bubbly. Do you know what I mean? You got all those traits to you. So it's interesting to see how those traits have transformed into who you are today as well. But you set me up into the next question I wanted to ask you in terms of football. Like you said, your brother was good at it, and you kind of wanted to emulate how he was. Now, where did the love of football come from in terms of maybe him or the family? Was there a certain player or was there a certain situation that kind of made the family fall in love with football?
I suppose, to be honest, like I remember my first time I saw a football was back in Bangladesh,
Mm.
and a gentleman that used to help the family out in the house and so forth. Um, he brought a ball and he kicked it into the sky. And I remember looking at this ball and thinking, wow, that ball is going really far.
Mm-hmm.
And since I've been back to Bangladesh a number of times, when I look at that courtyard and I see how far that ball went,
Yeah.
it was nowhere near. But as a child, you just think, wow. So I suppose there I was thinking, wow, you can kick this thing and it goes in this direction. And once I made that transition to the UK, football was the thing that I could do easily,
Mm-hmm.
um, in school, outside of school, that allowed me to actually connect with people. So that initial reaction to watching a football being kicked and then seeing an actual football pitch and a goal and
Mm-hmm.
everything else was a eye opener. And yeah, my brother used to play and the other kids will play, and growing up in the inner city parts of King's Cross and Camden,
Mm-hmm.
um, you always had these small cages where there'll be 20, 30 kids messing about and just playing football from there. And I suppose that's where the love started, is that
Mm-hmm.
I was able to express who I was, not through the language of English, but through the movement of football
Yeah.
and being able to showcase my skills or just enjoy celebrating a goal with friends and so forth. And that kind of set me up.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I remember my brother got into the district team, and I was like, "What's the district team?" Um, and then someone else asked me, "Oh, would you like to play for a grassroots team?" And kind of started from there. Basically, he was playing in the district team.
Mm-hmm.
I started playing with the grassroots team. This was about 10, 11. Um, and it was a little bit of a competition to actually be better than him, and ended up
Okay.
playing with the district team as well.
Did it come natural to you, like in terms of your ability when it came to football, or did you have to actually work for it?
It definitely did not come natural to me in terms of kicking the ball.
Mm.
Definitely because the kind of sports or kind of activities that I was doing in Bangladesh and when I first moved over to the UK wasn't anything to do with my foot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember my upbringers was a lot around like games of tag, climbing, making up games like playing with marbles, like
Yeah.
throwing marbles. And we used to play with stones, like you throw stones and you try to hit other stones, or um, hanging off trees and landing
Mm-hmm.
into the like the ponds in Bangladesh,
Mm-hmm.
and like swimming was a big factor. Um, And I suppose when you asked me that question, something just triggered in my head. So we used to have abundance of mango trees in our courtyard.
Okay.
So the amount of tree climbing that we used to do in the different fruit seasons was just in abundance.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, I suppose the physical movements came naturally to me, in the sense that not I was born with it, but because of my environment, I
Yeah.
picked
Yeah.
those up. But then football came along later on,
Mm-hmm.
and something that I had to really work at, where deliberate practice and kicking the ball against the wall and doing kick ups and playing till like the sun goes down. Those are the things that actually helped me to get better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because we spoke about this before as well. When you came here to visit me, in terms of the different training methods as well, because again, a lot of coaches tend to stick to that traditional coaching. You got to do this, you got to do that to get by and things like that. And we spoke about the different methods of, like you said, climbing. Doing other sports as well, which slowly academies are starting to do as well in the UK. Now, do you feel like academies should do more work when it comes to that, to build the motor skills from young, rather than focusing too much on the football element?
I think that's a bigger question, in the sense of like where we are within society. I
Mm-hmm.
think that the level of physical activity, physical movement, physical literacy um, is going down and down, in the sense
Yeah.
of how much kids are able to do in schools, but also the lifestyle that we're living. Kids are not actually playing out as much as I done, say, for example, in my younger days. And I think that is the biggest catalyst
Mm-hmm.
in where academies are having to do more. But and I don't think the responsibility should be put on academies, because it's not something, they're not there every day. I think physical activities and physical mobility and well-being should be done on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you go on a daily basis? You go to school. And I think there needs to be an increase on the level of sporting activities, and not even just sporting activities, just activities that
Yeah.
require movements, needs to be increased within schools. And at the same time, I can only compare it to mine. I remember going to the youth club after school
Yeah.
a huge amount, and I don't see that anymore. I don't see kids actually having a youth club where they can go to play football or play basketball or play
Mm.
table tennis, or have here and there like karate lessons, to boxing, to going on some trips. And I think that these are the missed jigsaw puzzles in the system, that's creating a big gap, where
Mm-hmm.
academies and athletics institutes have to pick up on. And I don't think those professional bodies doing it in professional clubs is actually the right. Yes, they can do it, and they can
Mm-hmm.
put in additional amount. But I think if we can get that increase on a daily basis, that will be very, very helpful to not just building a healthy person, but also setting up people for a healthy mobile life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, for sure. And even what you touched on earlier on in terms of cages, I remember growing up, like playing in the cages, 20, 30 players in the cage, and you're having to adjust your feet, or sometimes playing against older kids, you're going to get knocked down. You have to get up. You can't be seen as weak and things like that. So I feel like there's a lot of elements that we can learn from them. I feel like, yeah, like you said, it's more so, it's the lack of activities outside of the academies or school or things like that. And I feel like, again, we're in that day and age where even things like this, so we're doing a interview online. Like back in the days, you would have never thought, things like this would be operating. But it's interesting. But
Absolutely,
I want to touch
absolutely.
on. No, go on, bro. Go on.
And
You want to say?
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
like, and we can't walk away from the fact that the world is changing,
Mm-hmm.
and then the fact that we're doing this interview. I think we can still have. So why not have an online youth club?
Mm-hmm.
Why not have local councils putting on youth sessions, say after school, where you can sign in and you
Mm-hmm.
can work with someone who does karate, to someone who does
Yeah.
filmmaking, to someone who does basketball tricks, or whatever it is. I think we can't just rely on or look back on how things were, but move
Mm-hmm.
forward with the times, and move forward with this new generation. So in that way, I think we just need to be more creative on how we
Mm-hmm.
engage with the new generation of people, and how we go about learning. in video games, like you see those video games where you can actually be physically active.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be through the video games as such, but can we not get those platform included into schools that you can do at home, and you can still socialize with your friends, but you've got to do a physical activity or something like that. So yeah, those are the kind of things I think moving forward we need to be creatively adjusting.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's why I said he's a man on a mission. Yeah, because look at that ideas he's just rolling through right now. So now, but you know what? It's interesting that you said that, because again, it's like sometimes we're just scared of adjusting and trying something new. You know, like I've seen people around me that have, even myself. I'm speaking about myself. Let me speak about myself. Even when this whole pandemic kicked off, at first I was like, oh, here we go. What is this about? I'm sure a lot of people were as well, but it's like at first I was fearful of trying new things. You know, doing something like this was, I thought about it before, but actually executing it, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do it. But it's like you have to go into the unknown, and you never know what happens, man. And it's a beautiful thing as well. Like you have to adjust. But I want to touch on bouncing around a little bit here. But so you go into the district. From there, did you sign for Arsenal there, or was it what was the process for you getting at Arsenal?
Yeah, luckily the district team came about through one of my friends asking me to actually play, but I was only playing school football with school shoes and ripped school trousers. It was them ones, like the mum used to go mad in terms of like, you played in your school shoes again, and they're torn. So yeah, the district football came about through someone at school saying, oh, there's actually a trial going on for the district. Do you want to come down? And I remember like going down to High Barnet, because I was going to school in Barnet, North London, North London, and taking the train as an 11-year-old from Camden all the way to the end, and getting the A to Z map out, coming at the station, and
showing your age now, bro.
But managed to get there, and I suppose that's something that when I look back at what actually drove me to actually go there, I don't even know. Like, I wanted to be there and I wanted to participate, and ultimately got into the district team. And I remember the following week or the week after, we had it was a Saturday, and there was district games, and they asked me to play, and I was like, I was all hyped up. Yeah, I'm going to go and play and so forth. And my brother was playing, and then that became the problem, because I remember, oh yeah, we've only got one pair of shin pads between two of us.
Okay.
So I remember like him playing in the first half, and then him sending it over to me like in the second half, but putting socks and other things in to just cover it up, like doubling up. So that's how like the district football came about, and then utilizing the means that we kind of had at that time. And then from the district teams, where I started to get a lot of attention, and I was in the grassroots team as well, but then teams started inviting me to trials. And I remember like finishing off like a district team, and I'll be walking through the car park ready to go on the 142 bus or whatever it was, and then an adult will come up to me and like, oh yeah, I'm from this club, and here's my card, and would like to come on a trial. And you know what, I used to navigate it myself, in the sense that I'll take their details, and I'll speak to my friend, and if he got invited as well, we'll both go down. Those games of talent ID and scouting have long changed and better. But yeah, that's when I got picked up by a few different clubs. Ended up going to trial at QPR and spend some time there. And for whatever reason, things were not working out, or things were not working out, and all of a sudden someone else contacted me from Arsenal, and they were like, oh, would you like to come down to Arsenal? And the next minute I was at Arsenal, and living in Kentish Town at that time, when you're that close to Highbury, and on a match day you see the Red Army walking down Camden High Road and Holloway Road and going to the stadium, it was just like, wow, this is surreal. So yeah, got picked up by Arsenal when I was 12, and went on to play within the youth system over there.
Wow. Did you understand the magnitude of the club that you was going to play for?
Absolutely not, because at that time I remember like watching Match of the Day and stuff,
Mm,
and that was the only show that I remember as a family that we would access to see what football was. But Arsenal was just a club to me,
mm-hmm.
like a football club. Just turn
Yeah.
up and play, because I never had been to a real game before. I've never
Mm,
been to the stadium, but I've seen what it was like. And as soon as I started to get into that Arsenal kind of window of joining, that's when friends were like, "Oh, we should go down to the to Highbury,"
mm-hmm.
and we started paying like buying tickets on last minute from the turnstiles, or trying to just even sneak in
Yeah,
through
yeah.
the turnstiles, or hanging out on like there was a block of flats where you could
Mm-mm.
see some parts of the stadium. So in that way, the magnitude of it wasn't there, but I suppose back then it was more of a feeling that it was football. It was like
Yeah.
just purely football, and now it's like the magnitude is football, but also this global entity of a club,
Mm-hmm.
and I suppose it has different magnitudes in that way. So yeah, the footballing wise, it was just like, oh, it's a great team and
Mm.
plays great football, and it was exciting. So in that way, it was yeah, it was a amazing opportunity and experience to be able to play for the youth system.
No, for sure, man. Imagine that a boy from Bangladesh coming all the way to the UK, and then you moved to Kentish Town and you signed for one of the biggest clubs, arguably in the world. And that's how long did you stay there at Arsenal?
So I was there from 12 to, and I finished my scholarship at 18.
Okay.
And yeah, it was about six and a half years, but time flew. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I mean time flew, it's just like I suppose time flies, period.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it was an amazing time in the sense of the younger age groups of playing schoolboy football, being around some great players, going to a full-time education program that was challenging in
Mm-hmm.
the sense for me, I was not someone who was, I would say, I, I was a good learner. I wanted to learn, but I wanted to learn at my own pace,
Mm-hmm.
in my own way, and not the way it was expected. So education in a school didn't suit me, like a teacher leaning over me or someone saying you have to do this or you got to get this assignment in, because I had to process the information or do my own research and so forth. It took me a lot longer to
Mm-hmm.
understand certain concepts or paragraphs or Shakespeare or whatever it was. It
Mm-hmm.
was just
Yeah.
like a never ending reading over again. And also, I suppose I didn't want to show up in my education in the sense that there's a lot of things that I didn't know. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of held myself back within writing and speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was a phenomenal program because we got to be in a full-time education program, at the same time play football. It was demanding. It was challenging, like getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning as a 13-year-old, catching a train, and then going all the way to Hymes Park and in the county of Essex, and getting back at 7 o'clock. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
something that I envisaged I'll be doing, but there was there was a building of resilience in the sense that you have to, if you want this, you have to do this. But at the same time, there was a loss of, I suppose you don't realize it when you're then, but in terms of social upbringing and so forth, because you're not around your friends and everything else. But yeah, those are the kind of sacrifices you make,
Mm-hmm.
and you look back and you think, okay, I topped up in this area, I might have missed out in this area, but you have to actually deal with it.
Mm.
So yeah, no, that was a phenomenal experience, and the number of like quality players,
Yeah.
coaches, like was just a phenomenal experience to be around.
No, for sure, man. I'm just trying to picture it as well. Because at that time, Arsenal was like the Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? It's even though now it's a huge club, but I mean at that time you had the likes of Bergkamp in the club, you had the likes of Henri at the club and things like that. Obviously, Arsene Wenger, who came to change the Premier League as well. Like now, the club is a huge club. The schooling that you got when it comes to football is fundamentally you've had one of the best schoolings in the world, arguably. Yeah. What life skills would you say you've taken from your time being at Arsenal that you've still used until this day?
I think both in a footballing sense, I've taken a lot of life skills, but also in a coaching sense of the working with
Mm-hmm.
the coaches. So I suppose in a life sense, it was that that challenge of getting up and going, and you got to be showing up every day. That was tough, but it really taught me that you have to really put yourself in it, and you have to dedicate yourself in whatever you do, and have that commitment to actually drive your own journey. And yeah, so a lot of discipline, a lot of focus, a lot of resilience, a lot of sacrifice in terms of not getting drawn out by what's going on in your social peer groups or losing focus. So in that way, that's something that stuck with me, and I suppose that also complements my younger upbringing of being in Bangladesh and the kind of character traits I saw from my father and my mother, and also people around me. From a coaching perspective, working with like top end coaches. I remember a coach that initially took me as a grassroots player, and he was just so social, like unbelievably, and he made the game fun. And then when I was at Arsenal, I came across a coach, Andy McDermott, who was my like fundamental years of getting into Arsenal. And I tell you what, he changed a lot of perspectives in regards to how I saw how I played the game, and to how I saw the game, how I see the game now, but how he delivered the game back then, because he was way ahead of his time. A lot of the things that are being implemented over the last 5-10 years was the kind of mindset that he would go with. Like the level of creativity in the delivery of his session was laughable, because back then people were like, why are you going to do that? Why would you play those kind of games? Why would you play rugby? Why would you skip for physical literacy? Or why would you train with small balls? And this is, we're talking 97, like this is a long time ago. So in that way, he was just like on a different character, different way of thinking. And I remember a lot of the time he say he was on his own little exploration of coaching. So he used to go over to the continental Europe, watch the Spanish teams, go to Ajax and spend time, and then also that having that mindset, okay, what do these players need? How do I actually bring that out? So he was a real big part of my coaching journeys, and many other coaches, but he was one of the ones that was in that early stage that gave me a lot of things in terms of doing things not outside the box, but thinking beyond it.
That's interesting, man. It's funny that the people that we come across sometimes in our lives are meant to be they're meant to be in our lives for a reason. You know what I mean? So it's like you coming across him maybe enhanced already what you had within you to see things in a different way as well. So it's amazing to kind of come across these people. But I'm going to jump into your coaching career at the moment. Like, what inspired you to pursue the coaching industry? Because as we see at the moment as well, there's a huge lack of diversity when it comes to managing, coaching, and in general, you know, what inspired you to get involved in that sort of industry, knowing the barriers that you might face?
I suppose for coaching for me, in some ways, when people have asked me this question, I was like, when did you start coaching, or how did coaching come about? I remember when we used to play in the youth clubs, and it's only in recent times I would say that was already coaching, like putting your group of friends together, then going to play the other state, make sure you're managing that everyone plays and you win the games, or you kind of give everyone a fair go, and entering leagues and without an adult, without any kind of support. So there was an element of coaching that went on right from the beginning. I suppose I really got into it with the curiosity, like how much better could I have been if I had a coach earlier on, or how much better could others be if they learned certain things. So my curiosity in terms of like just what was missing, or what could have been added on within my journey with other people's journey that would help them to ultimately develop. So that kind of brought about the coaching journey. And funnily, like coaching, I didn't pursue like football first as a coaching pathway. I remember coming at the game when I got injured and started playing semi-pro football and so forth. Um, I went and done cricket level one. I done
Okay.
basketball. I remember doing my football at the same time, and I actually remember doing my netball, and a lot of people laughed like, "Oh, why are you going to do a netball level one?" And I remember I was the only guy in the whole class.
Mm,
But in terms of understanding space and shapes and so forth, it was more about learning how to help people and suppose put strategies in place or develop people technically. And I was exploring. And that probably goes back to a little bit like Andy McDermott, what I mentioned
mm,
earlier on. Andy played a huge part in being that diverse mindset to look at different sports and bring different things in. And then I kind of narrowed off within the football angle, but
mm,
brought together the things that I learned from other sports, and working in sports development at the time, for the local council, really helped me to harness my coaching fundamentals at the beginning.
mm. No, it's amazing, man. And I can relate to that as well because I done like my badminton level one, and at that time, even though badminton was a decent sport that we done in school, but it was like little things like that. At first, I was like, why am I even doing this badminton level one? But it was just like I still didn't really know what I wanted to do and things like that. So I was doing these things, but looking at it now, it's helped me to become a better coach. Like you said, understanding different angles. You know, it's a different sport, but it's you can transfer a lot of the skills from that sport to football. You know, footwork and closing down space and what I mean, pressing or should I drop back and things like that. So it's interesting, man. And again, recommendation to all coaches listening or anyone that's looking to get into coaching, try different sports, try cricket, try basketball, and see how what you can learn from it, man. But so something that we're gonna keep it a bit real now. Yeah, I'm gonna go back to that point where there's a lack of representation in the sport. Now you're a man that's got huge experience in the football industry. You know, you've gone through so much different situations and things like that when it comes to trying to apply for new roles and things like that. I'm not saying that the reason why sometimes you might be blocked off is because of where you've come from, but do you feel, not just for yourself, but that the ethnic minorities or backgrounds of cultures don't get seen as much as local cultures?
Um, and this is a very deep question and one that needs to be spoken about as well. So I think we're making some good steps in terms of ethnic minorities, in terms of within the
Mm,
coaching window. But if I narrow it down to in terms of just maybe looking at from an Asian perspective,
mm-hmm,
I think the narrative has been like in terms of Asians don't play football, or and we're talking about, say for example in England,
mm-hmm,
Asians don't play football or Asians don't are not in coaching and so forth. And those things were things of the past. And the new generation, we're talking third, fourth, fifth generation,
mm-hmm,
um, are more open to careers in sports, to playing sports professionally, to working within the professional game, whether it's a coach, whether it's a technical director, whether it's the CEO. So there is an opening in that, and that's a huge mind shift from
mm-hmm,
the Asian community. And in terms of like those opportunities within getting those opportunities, so we've got this mind shift now. Now we're looking at how do we get these opportunities or how do we access it. Without doubt, there is a systematic network of things that are in place that makes it difficult for those that never been within that network to
mm-hmm,
actually access those. So in that way, it's it's hard to actually get the knowledge or the insight to first of all go for that job, but secondly, if you want to go for that job and you just want to find that little bit of information, there hasn't been anyone that you can relate to, that you can pick up the phone call to,
mm,
the phone to, and ask them some questions. That makes it even more difficult. So it's almost like we're in a what comes first, the chicken or the egg, like.
mm-hmm,
And this is where those positive actions that are in place helps something needs to happen first. You need to get some sort of role models, people that people can aspire to be. So in that sense, yes, from an Asian perspective, and I'm talking from an Asian community, there is a lack of opportunities in the sense of going to those higher levels, but at the same time, sometimes there needs to be some positive action, and those actions are taking place. But having said that, it always comes back to the individuals. You have to really prepare yourself to be able to take on that position and deliver what needs to be delivered. Be ready for that position, whether it's a qualification, whether it's maybe not the experience the job requires, but some transferable experiences from other things. But having said that, the people that are recruiting still need to value and see those transferable skills. So if I'm applying for a CEO's job but I have never worked in a football club, but I've been a CEO at an organization, there are valuable transferable skills, but football needs to be more open to those transferable skills as well, because those underrepresented minority communities that might not have those different areas of football expertise still have expertise in other areas that can complement the game. So yes, there is an underrepresentation, but I'm pleased that we've made a shift from where we was. We're changing mindsets, and now we're tackling the systematic networks that exist and positive actions in place. And moving forward, we want to get to a place where there is role models that are in places where people can look up to, people can reach out to, and people can ultimately actually go and be those roles. So in that way, there is lots of work to be done, and we're only going to get forward if we continue with this awareness and momentum we've got at this current space, where conversations are being had that should have been had a long time ago. Actions are being taken that should have been taken a long time ago, and people are willing to actually support and develop in a positive way those underrepresented groups.
No, for sure. And again, I'm not just saying it because I know you, but because I've seen firsthand the work that you do and what you're capable of doing. I feel like the likes of yourselves do deserve to be in that position, that forefront, the face of certain things, where you are the role model, you are the person, the go-to person for people within your community, because you've earned the right, you've put in the work, you've done all of these things over the years. And I feel like you said, progress is being made. And I feel like, again, you as a character, you're not going to hold things, but you're not going to use things to hold you back. You're always a person that you want to improve, you want to get better, you want to get to that next level. Now, something that I want to ask you is that, because a lot of people tend to like use these things as an excuse to kind of hold them back and not really go for it. You know, I know there's barriers for sure. I definitely know there's barriers, but for you, what non-negotiable attributes for yourself would you say that you implement to say, you know what, this is it, I need to be doing these things regardless of whatever the situation is?
I think the biggest non-negotiable for me personally is that you don't lose belief, and you don't downplay yourself. So what I mean by belief is all the things that are happening, keep faith with it, and that faith comes from you actually working every day, you developing yourself, you learning new things, that keeps that confidence and keeps that faith moving forward. And I think that's one of the big things, is that with every knockback or every nose, you take something from it, and you see that it's the end journey. So for me, it's like, it's not about winning the cup that's important. It's about what you put into winning the cup that's more important. So what processes, what traits, what behaviors. So that first one of keeping faith and keeping going is critical. And at the same time, be your word. Like, if you say you're going to do it, do it. If you stand up for something, stand up for it full-heartedly. If you're going to commit to something, commit to it with everything that you've got. So that level of integrity and discipline is critical. So whatever it is, if someone is trying to, or a situation is trying to sway you in a different way, you've got to hold your integrity tight. You have to hold yourself accountable and not be easily or bullied or intimidated to be like redirected in a negative path. And finally, for me, like patience is progress, and progress takes patience as well. So in that sense, you have to be in it. You have to stay in the pack. You have to finish your marathon, whatever the time it takes. Just because it's taken a little bit longer doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So whatever you can do, stay in the pack. So if you're trying to be a footballer, you're trying to be an athlete, do what it takes to actually stay in the pack. As long as you're in and around the pack, you're going to give yourself a good chance, because then you can lean on people, you can ask questions, you can learn from them, you can hold on to them, and they will drag you. Same with coaches and so forth. So that third one of being patient, with purpose, like having a clear idea, like, you know what, I'm still going to get there, but this is how I'm going to do it, and you progress forward with that. So it's very important that one, you keep faith, like with all the things that are happening all around you and what's presented to you. Secondly, keeping that integrity and that discipline, that level of I am my word, I am who I am, and I'll hold myself accountable. And thirdly, really being okay, it didn't work today, and let's go again tomorrow. And having that patient progress attitude to the longer win is more important than anything else from my point of view.
Well, that was powerful, man. Gotta let that sink in a little bit, because it's that marathon that people they're not ready for it. It's like they just, especially in this day and age that we're in, it's like everything has to be so instant. And I feel we're losing that aspect of that longevity, thinking about it in the long term, which is powerful, man. And boy, yeah, I need some time to let that sink in as well, man. That was powerful, bro. But something that you said in terms of purpose, yeah, do you feel like you have a life purpose, and have you found that yet?
That's a really, really powerful question. What's my purpose? I suppose the underlying thing is people are my purpose. Like that's the ultimate thing, is helping people, is developing people. It's making things more not comfortable, but more inclusive for people. So ultimately that I feel is what drives me. It's actually developing people, it's helping people, it's helping people to fulfill their potential. And I don't think there could be anything greater purpose than that, just in my opinion, because that's what hits for me. And every day it's those interactions with people that really makes life real. It's seeing people develop that makes it real. It's seeing people progress, it makes it real. It's seeing people fail, but you being there and helping them to overcome it makes it real. So people is the ultimate purpose, and in order to actually like be there with them, it takes a lot of understanding that we're all in this race together, and there is no separation between one person to another. I think me making it doesn't exist. Me making it with you is the same as, or like someone else getting the job that I've worked with or supported or developed. That's like me getting the job. So I celebrate those moments. So ultimately, people is the purpose. How can we actually make people better, develop people, make them more confident in themselves, and yeah, ultimately change the future for those people to come.
No, the reason why I asked that, because I just remember, the journeys that we used to have at the beach up here, and it's like we were speaking about that in terms of purpose. And I've thought about it before in the past, but when you asked that question, I was like, you know what, I've thought about it, but I haven't really thought about it. Do you know what I mean? I feel like, again, a lot of people don't tend to actually sit down and digest exactly why are we here, what are we doing here. Do you know what I mean? What is our life purpose? And I feel like the time that we're in the moment, at the moment, doesn't matter who you are. We're all in the same boat. Whether you're living in a big mansion or you're living in a one bedroom or a studio flat or anything, the fundamentals are right now. Everyone's locked up. No one's allowed to do anything. you know, no one's allowed to go and, like, some people are not allowed to go and make money or anything like that. So fundamentally, we're all in the same boat. Do you know what I mean? We're all here chasing the same things, but it's a beautiful journey, man. And that's why I wanted to ask and kind of get it on record as well, so people can hear it as well. But you spoke about, you know, obviously going. Sorry, bro. You want to say something?
No, definitely. Like in terms of that, I suppose this is it's an interesting, it's a very big question,
Mm,
and you can talk about it in a lot of detail. And passion and purpose, there's a very, very close link to it.
mm,
So, like passion to work with people, purpose like to work with people, to develop people. It's like it's almost so interconnected. So once you find what you're passionate about,
mm,
in some ways it is your purpose,
mm,
um, and vice versa. So in that way, like what really gets you up for me,
mm,
like developing myself, developing others, developing players. That's like abundance of joy to be able
mm.
to do that. So yeah, it's a hard one, like being fully clear between passion and purpose, and knowing what you're doing it for and how you're driving it.
No, for sure, man. I feel like it's, like you said, it's a big question. I feel along the way we will get the answers. I feel like it's a life journey to find the answer sometimes, you know, to get to your life purpose. But you spoke about, you know, working with people as well. Again, someone like Michael Johnson, which you had an incredible journey with him with the Guyana national team, which for the first time you guys helped them to qualify for the Gold Cup. And now he's working with the England under 21s. That's something again that, you know, you working with him has kind of, you've bounced off each other. Like seeing him go to, like, you know, working with the under 21s and your experience with the Guyana team, like how was that again, just in general, in terms of the experience and the whole getting him to the Gold Cup and working with Michael Johnson, and to see him again go into the England squad, like how has that been for you?
It's interesting, like and you make the reference to Michael. Michael, we had lots of conversations before we went for the Guyana role, and it's not just working with Michael; it's what Michael created. Michael created an opportunity for a group of people to come together,
Mm-hmm.
and a group of people with varying mindsets and abilities and characteristics, and a real diverse pool of thinkers, and that ultimately created a real good buzz within the group.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that was one of the biggest things that I appreciated, was that the team that he put together allowed us all to develop, but yet challenge, yet have very deep, meaningful conversations about our views and how we want to
Mm-hmm.
do things. And that's one of the things that I'm very thankful for. And in terms of the Guyana journey, it when it came about, and I spoke to a few people, people were like, "Oh, are you seriously thinking about that?" And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Yeah, I'm seriously considering." And done a bit of thinking and reflecting, and looked at a few details on the internet and some research, and made the decision to go with it. And for me, it was one of the best experiences, because it was something outside of what I'm used to knowing. It was something I didn't even know. So there's things that I knew about it, and there's some things that I didn't know about the country, the people, the environment, and so forth. So I really stepped into the unknown in some
Mm-hmm.
ways, not knowing what the quality of the players, the coaching environment, the facilities, the culture, how it was going to work on a short, medium, longer term basis. So it was really stepping into something that was really unknown. But through that, we was able to actually be very adaptive in our planning, because the nature of the environment needed that, and yet create something that was very meaningful to
Mm-hmm.
the players and the people of Guyana. And the reason why we was able to make it meaningful, and I look back at it, is because of that diverse pool of staff, and what they brought to the table. Some of the conversations that we were having wasn't even about football.
Mm-hmm.
It was purely like how do we actually improve someone's life? That
Yeah.
player who's in a situation, how do we actually cater for so and so who's about to have a baby but has to work and doesn't play professional football
Mm.
but has good enough ability to actually be in the squad? Um, and I remember when we first talked about taking on the role, one of the big things was, let's put we're going to go with the role, we're going to take it on, but the main objective was leave it in a better place than where we found it.
Mm-hmm.
So irrelevant of like whether we qualified or not, if we left it in a better place with the coaches, with the players, with the environment, that was the ultimate aim for
Success.
success,
Mm.
or the outcome. So yeah, we worked with that kind of mindset. How can we make it better? How do we leave it in a better place?
Mm-hmm.
To the outside world, it might look like, oh, you have to go and win something, or you have to produce some of the best players. But in the background, we actually achieved a lot more than actually qualifying just for the Gold Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and funnily, like taking on the team in that August of 2018, and by 2019 March, we made history, taking a team that's never ever qualified for a major competition,
Mm-hmm.
then making history by qualifying for its first major competition
Yeah.
was a huge achievement for everyone that was involved. And I suppose, like I say, when you do something like that, you change people's perception and you change the
Mm-hmm.
perception of the future. And for the Guyanese players and the community, everyone could say we've been there once and we can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to go from that narrative is unbelievable. And that's something that Michael and the team, everyone really pushed for, was how do we change the narrative? How do we change the mind system of not being able to do it, or thinking we can do it, to actually we're going to do it, and we achieve it. So that was a huge testament. And as for myself, one of the big things I remember, with all the things that was going on, and there was a lot of things that didn't go according to plan. No one can ever take away your experience.
Mm-hmm.
They might be able to take away a lot of things, but no one can ever take away your experience. So be in the experience, and absorb things, and reflect on it, and process it. And then if you need to let some things go, let go, keep the parts that you want to keep. But
Mm-hmm.
no one can ever take away your experience. So whether you're working at a professional club in the Premier League, or you're working in a developing country, the experience is your biggest currency. And I will always uphold that as one of my biggest achievements in life, is that I was able to go somewhere with a group of people, and through a great opportunity that was created, and gain experience that others might not get,
Mm.
or others might not go for. And that's left me in a place of I suppose, a real appreciation. Now I
Yeah.
was very fortunate to actually have that. So yeah, it was a phenomenal experience.
And speaking of experience, I can't go past this without us, speaking about is our conversation with Mr. Jurgen Klopp.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I remember when I got the email, yeah, it was late night over here, and it was at 1 o'clock. For some reason, I got up and I looked at my phone. I see the email, yeah, you got a conversation with Jurgen Klopp tomorrow. And I had to rub my eyes. I said, what? Jurgen Klopp? I had to wake up my missus and say, hey, I'm chatting to Jurgen Klopp tomorrow. She was like, ah, cool. Went back to sleep. I'm like, I can't go sleep right now. Then I got a phone call the next day, and you was like, we're on. I said, what do you mean we're on? He was like, Jurgen Klopp. I was thinking, okay, so you're in as well. At that time, I'm not going to lie, I was nervous. Like, just to speak to him, because again, someone that I look up to, and everything that he's achieved, and someone that I aspire to get to that level and things like that. So I was nervous at first. But when you phoned me and you said, you know what, you're in it as well, that kind of settled down my nerves a little bit and things like that. So obviously we spoke about just in terms of the experience and everything like that. But I wanna get your experience, obviously, for people to hear. Like, again, just talk us through. To some people it might be like, oh, you just spoke to Jurgen Klopp, but there was so much things that we got from him. But for you, again, what was that like for you?
Yeah, no, it was definitely one of those surreal experiences, but yeah, one that we definitely got a lot from it.
Yeah.
Um, But when I look back at it, and when I was in the conversation, we was in the conversation, one of the biggest things that I felt was the level of human quality that he naturally cascaded from him was like, just, I am just Jurgen, and that was it. Did I just try to put an accent on as well?
Do you know what I was gonna say? And by the way, people, Taff turned up late to the call as well. Yeah, he turned up late to the call for Jurgen, but no, he had some technical difficulties, man. But yeah,
there was some technical difficulties. But what I loved about Jurgen was he was on time.
Yeah,
and he reminded me the Germans were still on time.
That's true.
That was hilarious. But in terms of like when we was in the conversation and when he was answering the questions, there was so much about being who you are, being true to yourself, being on a level playing field with your players, and the players are with you on a level playing field as well. Like everyone was just on a level of, okay, he's not a footballer and I'm not the manager. I am the human being in the same changing room as him, and let me connect to my players on that deeper level. And I think that comes from just him being so comfortable within himself, and being true to his philosophies and way of life. But yeah, no, it was an unbelievable experience, and that's the biggest things that I take away, is that just be real, just be who you are, and through that, he's been able to, what I felt from the conversation and what he shared was that he was able to connect to all his players, even though they're all different and come from vastly different backgrounds and playing abilities and have been playing. It was that he was able to connect to them individually on a human level that put everyone on a level playing field, and they were all playing for each other. So no, that was a phenomenal conversation. And yeah, I'm sure he won't forget, because those technical issues was crazy, and not having internet at the right time and so forth. But no, I think definitely one to pick up on, probably in a couple of months' time, or maybe when the COVID situation clears up, because there were some areas that I felt we could have expanded on more and more, and he wanted to share, because some of the questions that was presented to him, he really, really went into it in depth. And it's a shame that it was only the parts that were shown with the parts that were shown. But no, absolutely phenomenal experience.
No, it was amazing, man. And big up Troy as well, Troy Townsend, for organizing it and things like that. It was just amazing, man. It was surreal, to be fair. Like, once I come off the phone call, I was just like, you actually spoke to Jurgen, like, or Jurgen, like you said. But bro, you know what? We can talk for hours and hours and hours, and I feel like I still haven't really touched in depth with a lot of stuff, and I'm sure we'll have a part 2 at some point, and hopefully do something face to face as well. But what I wanted to ask you a quick fire round question, yeah, just quick fire round question of certain things. So I'm gonna ask you, best player that you've played with.
I think growing up, and it's a shame, like he retired earlier, but for me, coming through the system, David Bentley was a magic of a player. Like, it felt like while Dennis Bergkamp was playing in the first team, playing with David Bentley was like playing with Dennis Bergkamp. And I remember just seeing, or just being on the pitch with him, and him being able to do things or play the game in a certain way, was a huge eye opener. Like, how is he so far ahead? How is he able to do this? Or how does he think in that kind of mentality? So yeah, David Bentley would be top for me.
So that's a powerful player as well, man. Again, I remember when he first was coming through, and he had that sort of Dennis Bergkamp, because of the way he had his touches and things like that. But sometimes his delivery was like Beckham-ish, and he's the way he was flamboyant with it as well, and his appearance. I think there was a lot of resemblance to Beckham. But That's a good player, man. And I want you to share a bit of that story with Dennis Bergkamp when you was it that when you was training or something like that, and you went to do shooting practice
Oh,
or something like that.
yeah, I remember. So chances like I'm forever grateful. I think I was about 14, 15,
Mm,
and I got injured through the summer period, um, and I was getting treatment at the old training ground, and Dennis Bergkamp and Pat Rice was doing some finishing practicing, and I had just done my rehab running or something outside, and this was the latter stages, and they were like, "Oh, can you come and join in? Can you set some balls up? Can you strike some like cross it in, and he'll be able
mm,
to finish it off and so forth." And I remember that. I remember those moments. Like it was crazy because there was something about the silence that Dennis created when he trained was like he just went into a ultra focused zone where he was able to switch off time. That time didn't exist, and everything just it's a bit like how I suppose Pirlo plays, like it looks like he just glided. It
mm,
was a bit like that. But yeah, I don't remember a sound in that moment in that session because the level of focus was something else. You can see like the full technical flow of when he's about to strike the ball, when he's about to make contact, or when he's moving to prepare himself or adjusting his body, and appreciation of every opportunity. Like it's
mm.
okay, this opportunity is coming. This is what I need to do. And what I mean by the silence is like looking into him. You feel like he's having these conversations in his head. Um, so yeah, that was an unbelievable experience.
Was your delivery on point?
My delivery never needed to be on point because he was finishing them off. No, it was a simple practice to be honest,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, he was something else in terms of how he used to train. And
Mm,
I remember like the way he used to just walk around the training ground even
mm,
as a 16-year-old, and he's in the first team, and you're going for your scholarship program. You see the demeanor and the way he carried himself um, was a professional footballer, but a human being walking in the shoes.
mm.
Like you see the red shirt, but what was walking in the shoes was someone just had an appreciation for people, respect, and the way he done things. Um, yeah, unbelievable person and a player.
No, for sure. One of my favorite players for all time, for sure, man. Right, next one. Best player you've coached.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't answer this one right about now, to be honest.
All right.
And the reason why I wouldn't answer this one right about now is there's potentially a flock of players that are coming through
Okay.
that I feel like okay in 2-3 years time, hopefully these players go on to fulfill their potential. There is a few that
Mm-hmm.
should hit the ground running, and some are um, within that window of first team football,
Mm-hmm.
in and out, but they haven't quite established themselves. Some that are still coming through, but they're in that brink of floating around it. And yeah, I'm really excited for them.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I'm excited, I remember about, and this was part of my development. I remember a colleague when I was coaching at a club. They were like, "Oh, you're coaching this team.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think they're going to be in 8 to 10 years' time? Write down their names, write your little prediction, and see if you can actually see into the future." So there's been some that have fallen off, but there's
Mm-hmm.
some that are still on the radar, and they're on that kind of window. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
something to be answered within the next
The
two
next part
seasons.
two, yeah. Part two, we'll
Yes,
get that
part
going on.
two.
But yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of exciting players coming through from England, man, for sure.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
there's a
Without doubt,
bunch, man.
I think where we are now in terms of players coming through the system is in abundance. My
Mm,
only concern would be like playing time, but
yeah.
when we look at the players within the clubs, when we look at the national team, year on year, the quality of players is unbelievable. But that's also down to the amazing work that's gone across all the academies, all the
Mm,
categories. the coach education system within the whole nation has been unbelievable. And it's a shame COVID has somewhat deterred or derailed a little bit because of the changes and so forth. But there's going to be some abundance of amazing players that are coming through. Fingers crossed that everyone goes on to fulfill their potential. But at the same time, we're talking about players, but abundance of coaches.
Yeah.
Just because the system has improved so much. So overall, we're stepping forward. Year on year, we're stepping forward.
No, for sure. I agree with you. Next one. If you wasn't in football, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't in football, interesting question, because I am in football and I'm not in football. Because to develop people, develop players, develop myself, I can't just be in football. And I'm not in just football. And in many ways, football is just a vehicle for me, in the sense that you can coach players, you can develop players, but there's so much more development that takes place off the pitch, around the training ground, away from the training ground. So who I would be is someone who is still developing, I suppose, like in all different areas. But I would definitely be doing something that works with people, and supports and develops people to fulfill their potential, at the same time supporting and developing my own potential. So yeah, I don't think it's just football alone in football.
Yeah,
Not sure if I quite answered the question.
Well, no. I mean, you're doing what you're meant to be doing. Do you know what I mean? Whether it be in football or without football, like you're in your purpose. So yeah, no, you definitely answered it.
I know where I want to get to, and I'm aligning things to that. But yeah, always here to help, always here to support. So feel free to reach out. Thank you for having me, and it's been an unbelievable pleasure being on the show.
No, pleasure's mine, bro. Like I said, we were supposed to be doing this a little while back, but again, it's all timing. And yeah, man, again, thank you for coming on. I'll put down your socials and a link in the description as well. So, bro, much love. Thank you again. Appreciate it. Obviously, we'll keep in touch anyway. But anyone that's gained a lot of gems from this conversation, because again, Taff has got so much abundance with him in terms of teaching and schooling and experience. So again, people, make sure to hit up Taff, check him out. And also, I need to get used to this, Taff, but like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, yeah. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode, guys.